Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 1, Chapter 3, The Friend. Written and narrated by T.S. Prohart. With a swirling green ignition, one of the location stations that were established within Aurora buzzed to life with an electrical hum. Shortly thereafter, came both Maple and Jay, stepping through into the glowing and bustling night city. Adjusting their eyes, the two friends took in the sight of Aurora's rebuilt form that bloomed gorgeously within the night. Neon lights went up and down the skyscrapers in shades of blues, yellows, greens, and even oranges. These building interiors all illuminated with either snowy whites or golden glows behind the windows, adding more onto the beauty of the rebuilt city. Hopping down upon a yellow-lit sidewalk, both Jay and Maple stared down its busy path that was illuminated with both streetlights as well as a special kind of tree life. After Core's reformatter tore itself apart, the residual M radiation it left sprinkled down upon the city, creating life you would only find upon Salvaheim and other purely matter-ridden environments. These trees and vegetations sprouted upwards in curving formations, consisting of both blue and red leaves. Dangling from their branches were small matter crystals that shimmered with the same shades as their leaves, and all glowing to create a comforting hue to anyone who passed by. With a warm blush forming on her cheeks, Maple gently reached her right hand down and curiously latched her pinky around Jay's left. In a flustered response, the small spark flinched for a second, before allowing his own pinky to wrap around Maple's in return. Soon enough, all fingers were interlocked, till both their palms gently rested against each other's. Giggling in a snippy smirk, Maple eyed Jay with what he had always took as a beautiful orange stare, while he himself just awkwardly smiled with a nervous sweat.
"This way, Dimples."
The small matter girl expressed before walking forwards and dragging Jay behind herself. Together, the two kids began the speed walk and evade around local civilians who stared in curiosity at their venture. The air was cool to the touch, with zero clouds within the sky. Due to the lack of large gas formations, the stars above all shimmered with a beautiful essence that would even make the most well-versed astronomer blush. If Jay was to be honest, it was an almost perfect night, a stark contrast to his horrible day.
"Oh, come on! This way, Slowpoke!"
Maple shouted with glee as the two of them neared upon a wooden bridge over the city's riverstead. Continuing to take the lead, Maple began to happily skip with the look of pure joy on display, while Jay stumbled and lagged behind. Although he was happy to spend this time with Maple, the young spark was still internally struggling. For the first time in his life, the boy was experiencing a sense of doubt, mixed with a heavy wave of anxiety. It ate up his stomach, chiseled away at his brain. It was an awful feeling, Jay thought. Everyone pretty much forgave him, but why were these thoughts so eating at him now? Young Jay didn't understand these emotions. If anything, it just made things oh so worse. However, in the middle of this sudden drought, Maple turned her head and eyed Jay, taking notice of his expression.
"Whoa, hey, you alright?"
The matter girl questioned with a whirl in her steps. Now facing her friend, the two soon-to-be freshmen stood upon the bridge's center, eyes locked and emotionally intertwining. Yeah, I'm okay. The sparklet quickly replied with a compression in his thoughts. Where's the spot we're heading to? Jay then asked, holding off on saying what had been on his mind. With a smile returning, Maple spun herself back around to skip again, dragging Jay along with her as she did so.
"Just keep up and you'll see."
To these words, a tiny smile formed upon Jay's face as he followed closely behind his dear friend. Leaping from the bridge, Maple twirled through the air, leaving the small spark watching in awe to her nature. With being 90% pure matter slime, Maple was able to contort her body in strange ways, so the twirl through the air while holding a hand was nothing new for Jay. It was just her personality. Maple was always so carefree, happy and filled with whimsy. Her imagination was bright, and her heart was in the right. If Jay was being honest, his best friend was also his crush. Yet, he didn't understand how to express those kinds of emotions yet. He really did like her, but didn't know how to tell her. As for Maple, her emotions were the same for Jay. She liked him as much as he did her, but her way of expressing it was through small gestures, just as in the moment.
Isn't the weather just lovely, Jay? Not too hot, not too cold. It's just right.
Maple exclaimed while landing back upon the sidewalk and taking the spark down another pathway. This one was dawned in arches of greenery. Leaves and plants stretched up and around large bars that extended from several buildings at the sides, holding small light bulbs that danced with fireflies. This walkway in particular had no one walking down it, and had been cleared out compared to the others. Being so close to midnight, it was pretty reasonable for the lack of life, leaving the two of them to be on their lonesome. Yeah, it is. Jay replied, while Maple continued to frolic forwards in a joyous manner.
Right? The night sky is just perfect too. All those stars, all the unknowns. To think our world is just one tiny speck in an endless sea of stars. Do you ever think about that?
Maple questioned as she stopped skipping and returned to a natural walking pace. I do think about that stuff a lot, actually. It's sort of just natural when your dad is from a completely different world. Scratch that. Reality. Jay replied back, while looking down to his friend, who began to sway their combined hands back and forth.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What's that like, if you don't mind me asking?
Maple inquired with a curious look in her glossy orange eyes. Like what? Asked the spark, as they continued on down the nature-filled path.
Being around someone like your dad for 24/7, going through different worlds, experiencing stuff normal kids like me, like we don't. Is it crazy? Magical? Adventurous? I really want to know.
Mabel demanded in a giddy posture, her free hand clenched in a shake, her eyes wide and full of wonder. It left Jay a tad flustered, finding her expressions and excitement adorable. But he had to be honest. I've actually never been to a different world like my dad. Revealed the small spark as he shoved his free hand into his pocket and looked away with an embarrassed stare.
What? Really?
Maple inquired with a wobbly tilt in her head. Yeah, I think it was probably because, my dad said I need training, so... Jay stuttered while trying to find a reasoning to his noticeably clustered words.
Oh, I see. Sorry if that made you uncomfortable.
Looking away herself, Maple bit the inside of her cheek as a cold, syrup-like sweat poured down her brow. The young girl suddenly felt as though she had started to peel a fresh scab, but in truth, just wanted to spark up a conversation with the boy she liked. No, it's okay. Really. Jay replied as fast as a viper striking a mouse. He too felt a nervous sweat pool from his brow. Neither of them had ever been alone together. Usually Quinn was there, a trash pack member, or one of their parents. But just alone together. It was new, exciting, but also nerve-wracking. Looking upwards and then to the side, Jay took notice of a pink-petaled flower dangling off one of the greenery wires. As its form swayed in the calm city wind, Jay had an idea to calm the mood once again. Reaching up and plucking the little plant off its stem, Jay craned his sight back to Maple and spoke back up. Here, he stated, while Maple turned back around and eyed the gesture.
You killed a flower?
She asked, with a raised eyebrow, leaving Jay in a more awkward position. No, he sputtered before Maple snorted with a giggle.
Thank you.
She expressed with a passive gaze before taking the flower and smelling it. As she did, Maple's dark reddish-brown body glowed to that of a gentle pink glow. The matter essence in her form reacted to the flowers, resulting in the energy within her soul to reflect its colors in a beautiful light. Eyes widening, Jay stared in awe to how pretty the scene was. Although brief, he couldn't shake just how amazing Maple was to him. Smiling with a satisfied stare, Maple gently raised the flower up and plopped it to be within her hair. As she did, the broken root of the flower glowed within, as her matter essence provided the plant a surge of life energy.
There. Now it won't die as long as it stays with me. You're welcome.
Maple exclaimed, leaving Jay to smile with a warm expression. You're so cool. To this compliment, Maple's cheeks ignited with an orange glow, leaving her to quickly look straight forward and scratch the back of her head.
What? Me? Nah. You're the one with all the cool powers. All I can do is stretch and change my body in weird ways.
Raising her left arm forwards, Maple contorted her hand into what looked like the head of a brachiosaurus, and extended her arm to look akin to the prehistoric creature's long neck.
Rah! Look at me! I eat plants and I sneeze on people trapped on a dinosaur-infested island! Rah!
She squealed, leaving Jay to snicker in response. You're saying that being a shape-shifting person isn't cool? Come on, you can extend your limbs. You can reach tall places and change into like anything you want. You're telling me that isn't something to be awed by? Come on, Maple. Jay asked as he reached his free hand out and rubbed Maple's dinosaur puppet.
Oh, stop. You're too kind.
Maple chuckled out before returning her limb back to normal. I'm just being honest. You're cool. If not to others, then you certainly are to me. Looking at her friend with a heartwarming smile, Maple felt her body slightly illuminate into the same orange shade as her cheeks, but quickly reset the glow to not embarrass herself.
Hey, we're right here, but we just gotta get up there first.
Maple stuttered out as both her and Jay exited the greenery path and eyed a fairly large building. Behind it was a strange and ominous glow, igniting the city into shades of both blue and hot pink lights. Jay wasn't sure as to what it was, but Maple did, with her smile reflecting it.
My spot is on the roof. Race you to the top?
Maple asked as she let go of Jay's hand. Race you to the top. You do know I can just...
3, 2, 1, go!
Without warning, Maple shouted with a laugh and turned on her heel towards the building. Extending her arms out, she lashed her hands upon the walls and began sticking and swinging her way upwards. Well, hey, not fair! He called before taking small warps forward. Teleporting upon the building's ladder chute, Jay began to run up the stairs while Maple continued to climb upwards. Jay knew he would instantly win, so he wanted to give his friend somewhat of a chance. Soon enough, Maple made it to the top, with Jay following close behind.
Aha! I win!
She shouted while using her fingers to express an L above her head. Only because I let you. Jay retorted while Maple spun back around and began walking towards the roof's backside ledge.
Sure you did, Toothless. Sure.
She giggled before taking a seat and overlooking the glowing lights below. Seeing that Maple was now sitting on the ledge with her legs dangling, Jay took a breath and did the same. Sitting at Maple's left, Jay let himself relax and looked down upon the city below. What he saw took him by slight surprise. Whoa. Jay softly let out as he took in the sight of ice skating in the early stages of summer. Below, in a figure-8 formation, was a large sheet of ice, surrounded by floodlights and cooling machines. Going atop and around its diamond blue colors were several people, all figure skating late into the night. Couples slid around, elders gently shuffled along, all while the ice began to change hue. Smaller lights that had been resting up next to the ice ring suddenly went from its blue shade to a red emanation of color. Reacting to this, an optical illusion effect caused the ice to bloom up with its same rose shade, resulting in the light shifts Jay had noticed a few moments earlier. It was stunning, the spark thought. Absolutely stunning. This is your spot? The sparklet asked, with a slight tilt in his head, watching on as the people continued to go around the infinity symbol. While tapping her knees with her hands, Mabel turned her head to the left and eyed the boy she liked, giving a nodding assurance.
Yep, this is it. I bet you weren't expecting it to be a skating rink.
Mabel asked, with a curious look to Jay's reaction, in which the small spark nodded with a sense of wonder. I didn't even know you could ice skate in the summer. How does that even make sense? Jay questioned before looking back to his friend with a curious set of eyes.
It's just the cooling machines that pull it off, you dork. They set this place up every Friday night and run it all the way to Monday.
Mabel explained with a small hand gesture before looking back down to the entrancing rhythm of skating below.
And it's very comforting for me to watch. The changing colors, the way everyone just goes around, the slight chill you pick up. It's all very
calming? Jay asked as that same little breeze whooshed up against his legs and hands.
Yeah. Look, when I heard about what happened, and then hearing you were missing for a few hours, I knew I had to do something.
Mabel expressed before slightly scooting herself over towards Jay.
I knew I had to bring you to the spot. To help you. To talk. If you want to, that is.
With purple-white eyes locking with hazel golds, Jay's whole demeanor looked to shift into an almost depressed state, before he looked back down to the world below. Never in Jay's life had he felt like this. Never had he been dragged through the mud by his own chains. Although his father understood, Jay continued to feel a stabbing sensation of guilt in his heart. I just wanted to help, you know. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to be up there with my family. It was like a calling for destiny. Jay expressed with clenched fists and a head raised towards the sky. But now I realize that I was in over my head. I rushed the chance without realizing how stupid of a decision that was. Lowering his hands and head back down, Jay released a sigh and felt to almost slump backwards to the roof, for the feeling of sleep had at last begun to catch up to him. Yet, he carried on with his thoughts. I destroyed an entire city block with a power I didn't know I had, Maple. If I hadn't stepped in, people would still be okay, and a criminal wouldn't be on the loose. All because I thought I could step up. Now look at me. I'm a failure. With a somber stare, Mabel quietly inched herself closer to Jay, and then looked back down upon the city rink below, trying to figure out her own thoughts.
We can always get lost in our own heads, Jay. Giving ourselves dark thoughts, feeding in the cruel insults.
Mabel began anew as she raised her hand and rested it atop the spark's shoulder.
I know it may be hard to see now, but don't give up hope on your dreams. It was just an accident.
Turning his head back around, Jay was reintroduced to Maple's comforting presence, as her words carried waves of understanding within. That's what everyone's been trying to tell me. It was an accident. I made a mistake. But accidents and mistakes are like spilling orange juice, texting the wrong person, not hurting people and destroying public property. Am I seriously the only one that seems to understand that Jay expressed as he took both of his hands and pressed them atop his forehead. I can't forgive myself for that, Maple. No matter what you all tell me. I screwed up. Now I'm worried about what else I can do. I'm scared. Jay almost whimpered, while Maple looked on with worried eyes to her friend.
I know I can't relate to something like that. I'm just a normal kid compared to you, Jay. But don't be afraid. Don't give up hope on yourself.
Maple continued on with her soft voice, now nearly shoulder to shoulder with Jay.
I think that we all have the ability to rewrite the thoughts in our heads. No one died today, you know? You did what you thought was right. You wanted to help people, even when the risk of danger.
Maple went on before feeling another fluttering blush arising in her cheeks.
And I admire that about you.
Looking back down, Maple watched the skaters once more, and then gently leaned to her left, resting her shoulder and head upon Jay's. Lowering his hands with a surprised look, the Sparklet stared down upon Maple, as she found a sense of comfort upon his presence.
You're my hero, Jay. Never forget that.
Falling silent, Jay suddenly began to feel a sense of ease wash over his body. To hear those words, those few simple words, was akin to a clean coat of water being dumped upon his skin. It was one thing to be forgiven, but knowing to be someone else's light sent a wave of ease to enter his heart. With small tears welling in the corners of his eyes, Jay gently reached back down and intertwined his right pinky around Maple's left. Without hesitation, she embraced Jay's hold, interlocking fingers and allowing for a comforting sensation to wash into their hearts. Shifting sights from the ice below, the two of them turned their heads back up towards the night sky and gazed upon the thousands of little stars above, recalling upon the topic of space from earlier. Thank you, Maple. Jay quietly spoke, as he too now rested upon her side.
Of course, Jay. Of course.
For a good while, the two of them continued to stare at the stars, lost in a world of fantasy and wondrous nature. Each light above twinkled with its own energy and glint, calling out to all the worlds below that may be seeing them as well. Space truly was amazing, Jay thought. So much was out there, a vastness that granted his thoughts rest. That was until another came crashing in, that left him sighing quietly. I still need to get my school bag, he muttered without taking his eyes away from the stars.
Do you need to get it now?
Maple questioned as she stared back down to her friend. Looking as well, Jay locked his eyes with Maple once more and felt butterflies arise within his stomach. No, I can wait. The Sparklet answered with a smile as both him and Maple returned their sights back up to the sky.
It really is a nice night, huh?
Maple stated as the moon glimmered beautifully above their heads, shining some well-needed light upon the world. Yeah, it is. Jay answered while a true sense of peace engulfed their souls. For a long few hours, both Jay and Maple simply talked and looked to the stars, discussing life and the possibilities in their future. But soon enough, the time came to where they had to part ways. With the hour being that of 1:30 in the morning, Jay and Maple stood back outside the Sparks cabin, with a nearby location station illuminated brightly within the nearby trees. Standing by the door, Jay smiled with both of his hands in his pockets, while Maple stood a few feet back, hands clenched but gleeful. Thanks for bringing me out tonight, Maple. It really helped. Jay thanked with a happier tone than before, leaving the young Lewins to nod her head.
I'm glad. You still coming to the skate park later on later today, I should say? ZB is bringing pizza.
Asked Maple, with Jay nodding in a positive response. Of course. Same time as per Saturday Standard. Jay assured with an affirmative thumbs up to his words. Nodding down, Maple approached and gave her friend a tight hug that Jay accepted in full. Wrapping his arms around her in return, the two held on for a long moment before eventually letting go from one another.
Good night, Jay.
Mabel whispered with a small wave before turning around and making her way through the tree line. Good night, Mabel. Jay whispered back, making the girl turn and smile once more before approaching and crossing through the location station, leaving Jay alone in front of his family cabin. With a small breath, the spark approached the door and warped himself into his living room, now with his backpack finally around his shoulders. Landing upon soft carpet, Jay let out a breath and illuminated his horns to see. Glowing a deep blue, Jay created a dim light source to help guide him through the house, which was all but quiet, except for Joby's loud snoring. Looking to his right side, Jay found his older cousin crashed out upon the couch, wearing black shorts and a wrinkly blue tank top that was covered in potato chip dust. With her mouth wide open, his older sister, like Spark, bellowed the most annoying sounds one could imagine, but thankfully, ones that would help mask Jay's footsteps. Walking forward, the young Spark felt his stomach ever so gently growl. He hadn't eaten much spaghetti that afternoon, and was now craving something small. A midnight snack, as one would say, even if it had passed the 12 a.m. mark. Quietly shifting his route, Jay began to make his way to the kitchen, passing by both furniture and photos and the like, one of which catching his eye in particular. This specific photo was of his mother and father, Joby, and a little baby version of himself. Behind his family were several others, Uncle Knock and Cot, Auntie Coco, Grandma Delilah, and even the family friends, Sarv and Tucker. The photo appeared to have been taken a few days after Void's brother's attempt to destroy everyone. Jay wasn't fully versed on the whole story, but what he did know was that he was born the same day that his uncle presumably lost his life, righting a wrong and saving everyone he had betrayed. Another story for another day. The Sparklet quietly said to himself, recalling upon how secretive his father was in terms of his past. Rounding the corner and approaching the fridge, Jay yawned with the mightiest of awes and opened the cooler's confines. Reaching in, the Spark took out a jug of milk and wasted no time in getting himself a drink. Going over to the cabinet, the small Spark opened the wooden latches and took out a small glass. With items in hand, Jay poured himself a nice wad of milk and quietly closed both the cabinet and the fridge, placing the milk in before he did so, of course. Pantry time. The small Spark continued to quietly speak before approaching a drawn curtain within the kitchen's back wall. Taking hold of its rose-red fabric, Jay pulled the curtain aside to reveal food cans, boxed items, baking batter, and all other sorts of junk foods. Looking to his side, the small Spark caught wind of a granola bar box, that of chocolate chip and peanut butter. Reaching out, Jay quietly slipped his hand inside the already open box and pulled out his snack for that evening. Satisfied with his choice, Jay turned on his heel and began to tiptoe back to his room. That entire day had been insane, he thought. So many emotions, thoughts, choices, so much chaos, yet so much glee. Packaged into his own little Pandora's box, it felt like. As Jay crossed into the hall, he began to think more positively about the coming days. Training with his family and hanging out with his friends. With Maple. Maple. She truly was a shining light in the dark for Jay. But the way they interacted that night, was that stuff friends normally did? The Spark asked within. Holding hands? Hugging? Clearly being bashful and locked at each other's sides. Could that have been counted as a date? Jay asked, as he made it halfway to his bedroom, No, certainly not. He was too young for dating, Jay told himself. But he couldn't deny that the collection of feelings were in fact there. Perhaps in the coming years, something would bloom. But for now, Jay would rather focus on sleep as opposed to thinking about a girl, even if that girl meant a lot to him. The day's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay, Jay expressed to himself as he prepared to walk into his room, but stopped upon hearing something. Turning around faster than a rabbit noticing a cobra, Jay nearly dropped his milk and granola bar as he eyed the faint blue outlines before himself. To his absolute shock, nobody was there. Not a single soul to be seen. Hello? Jay quietly asked, for nothing to reply in return. Joby? He continued the question, wondering if it had just been in his head. However, it was then Jay began to hear something, an echoing thud that rang out with a faint beat. Wincing, Jay listened in as the thumps of what sounded to be a heartbeat emanated from somewhere within the house. What the heck? The spark quietly questioned as he looked to his feet. Jay couldn't explain the heartbeat. It felt as though they'd be coming from his mind, yet also in real life. Was he dreaming? Hallucinating? Jay didn't know. But the beating, it was so rhythmic, so enticing. It was as though he was being entranced to its tune. What is that? Jay curiously spoke while getting on the ground and pressing the left side of his head upon the wooden floorboards. The noise. It sounded to be coming from the basement. Jay whispered as he listened to the sound. One thump, followed by two others, then a pause, and then repeat. Thump, 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 thump. Standing back to his feet, Jay eyed the darkness within his home and found a sense of confidence rushing into his soul. He had to figure out what was making that noise. Slowly re-emerging into the dining room, Jay placed his milk and granola bar on the table, along with dropping his backpack to the floor. Taking a breath, Jay maneuvered past the living room and into a hall that was connected to his parents' bedroom. With soundless steps, Jay made it up to a door that was closed next to his mom and dad's, the basement door. Being as quiet as he can be, Jay took hold of its golden knob and turned it to the side, opening and revealing the long stairwell to the lower world. The staircase itself was thin and wooden, having delivered many splinters and bruises from the years spent with it. A small light bulb dangled above on a weak string, having not been turned on in at least several months. Before descending down, Jay looked towards his parents' door and was tempted to wake them up, but something stopped him from doing as such. It was as though he needed to investigate alone. Jay couldn't describe how or why, but it was as though his soul was telling him to do as such. Hello? The spark softly called into the dark that was slightly illuminated by his horns. Nothing replied. Nothing but the sound of the ever-present heartbeat that seemed to grow in volume. Gulping, Jay took one small step and then another, gradually going down the stairs till reaching the very bottom. Turning to his left, the spark was reintroduced to the pitch-black darkness that awaited him, causing a small shiver that itched down his spine. Craning his eyes to the side, Jay found the light switch and promptly flipped it up, to no avail. The comfort of full sight didn't arrive, leaving only Jay's horns as his flashlight in the darkness. Is anyone down here? The sparklet inquired, as he wordily summoned electricity to his fists. You don't want to mess with me. My mom and dad will whoop your... Jay then stopped himself before he could curse, and proceeded to fully walk into the dark. What are you doing, Jay? You shouldn't be down here by yourself. The young Voidson spat out within his head, but found his legs continuing forwards. It was as though he couldn't stop. His body, it was like to be a chunk of metal going towards a magnet. Jay couldn't explain it, but he just kept on moving. With his shoes clacking on the wooden floor, Jay passed by storage boxes, chests, strange items, some of these being Void's other body types, old rundown guitars, clothes, and other sorts of junk. Jay even passed by a sword with a moon-crested blade at its top. That's when at last, the sparklet came upon the noise. With the heartbeat louder than ever before, Jay set his sights atop an old wooden chest crate that had a dirty white sheet draped halfway over its form. What the? Jay questioned as he got down upon his knees and scooted himself towards the container. Reaching out, he took the old sheet and threw it aside, revealing the wooden box's detail. Dark blue wood, lined with gold metal plates, went up and down its rectangular shape, giving off the impression that whatever was inside had to be of some kind of importance. Surprisingly, there was only a latch as opposed to a lock on its front, which left Jay a tad baffled. Okay, it's probably just a rat, Jay whispered to himself as he then reached out and flipped the latch up with a loud click. A large rat. Jay continued as the heartbeat arose at a maximum decibel. It was so loud that Jay was shocked that the room hadn't been rattling. What was it? He kept asking himself, while taking the lid of the chest and throwing it open. Wincing, Jay looked away from the box's confines as a faint red glow appeared the light, stunning him and surprising his mind. Ah! What the? The sparklet asked as he returned the look upon the chest's interior. There, sitting in a bundle of old rags and clothes, was a cube. A glowing, pulsating red cube that had white outlines to its corners. As Jay took notice of the strange shape, he also became aware of something else. The heartbeat. It had stopped. Everything had turned quiet as Jay gazed upon the strange artifact within the chest. Was it a jewel? A personal item? A little spark didn't know. No way you were making all that racket. Jay spoke to no one but himself as he gently reached his hand in and lashed his fingers around the cube. Upon touch, Jay was shocked as to how cold the item was. It was almost on par to a fresh popsicle, numbing but enticing within one's hand. Raising an eyebrow, Jay tilted and turned the cube around in his hand, curious as to what he had found. It must have been of some importance if it was in a basement of all places, Jay thought, let alone its own box. Perhaps it was best to just put it away and go to bed. Perhaps he was just tired, hallucinated the sounds and voice after a long and stressful day. Yet, just as Jay was about to close it up, he noticed something. The cube. It had suddenly felt warmer. What the? He asked, while eyeing the artifact again, this time, noticing something unusual. The cube. It was starting to change color, and his fingers, they were glowing and emanating with a staticky aura. Whoa, what the heck? Jay stuttered with stunned eyes as the cube within his hand went from a blood-red shade to the glowing color of both blues and purples. Jay couldn't believe his eyes. The strange crystal had suddenly went from one color to another within moments. In his hand, it felt numb, like he had been sleeping on it all night. This wasn't normal, Jay told himself. None of this was normal. Okay, back in the box you go. Jay gasped out as he began to return the item from whence it came, but suddenly felt the shock as a diamond-shaped, flat and glowing eye suddenly appeared on the cube's front-facing side, eyeing Jay with its own stunned look. In utter shock, Jay's eye oval shrunk and his mouth sealed with a tight breath. Holding back a scream, young Jay couldn't shake his sight from the small eye that appeared, buzzing with whites and blues and sparking with small bursts of electricity. Blinking once and then twice, the cube eyed Jay with its own mind, and then slightly tilted itself to the side, proceeding to then speak, to Jay's utter shock. "Hi." "Ah!" Shouting in utter fright, Jay threw his hands back and fell upon the floor, while the now glowing purple cube yelled in surprise as it was dropped and fell back into the chest. "Ah!" Scooting back with now widening eyes, Jay held his tongue and stared at the glowing aura before himself, wondering what on earth he had just released into his home. "Ow! Jeez! Is that how you greet everyone? How on earth do you have friends, man?" The voice of the small cube said, as it then slowly rolled itself up to the thick set of sheets and eyed Jay with a hurting stare. In shock, the spark glared at the small cube, as its eye gave a confused expression. You're a talking cube. Yep, I need some serious sleep." Jay stuttered, while refusing to take his eyes away from the small item. I hate to break it to you, kiddo, but this isn't a hallucination. You are actually talking to a cube. I was starting to believe my call for help wasn't going to work." The cube revealed, as its singular eye spun with a twinkle of stardust. Your call for help? What are you?" Jay questioned, as he slowly crawled his way back forward. "Yeah, you can't believe how cramped I was in there. I was starting to think I couldn't reach anyone. But like an angel to the rescue, you got me out. Thanks a bunch, kiddo." The cube continued, leaving Jay with multiple questions and mixed emotions. "I think we should start from the top, in a more presentable light. Sorry for the scare, little buddy." Closing its diamond-shaped eye, the cube buzzed with a tiny spark of energy and divided his looker into 3 separate shining orbs. Within an instant, they took the familiar shape to that of the sparks, oval eyes and a tiny smiling mouth. "Hi, I'm Lotus. It's nice to finally meet you, Jay." Lotus, Jay thought to himself, before sitting cross-legged before the cube that smiled up upon him with tiny and innocent eyes. Lotus. That's an interesting name. Jay spoke before tilting his head. What are you exactly?" The boy questioned, leaving Lotus's face to emote in a quirky sort of snicker. "I am, or was, a guiding hand for your father in the past. I am a being that can help people walk their path and find a solution to achieving their purpose. Think of me as a personal life compass." Lotus expressed, causing Jay to tilt his head to the other side. A guiding hand? If that's the case, then why were you in that chest? Jay stuttered, leaving Lotus to change his expression into a more awkward tone. Well, you see, let's just say that me and your father, we left off on a bad foot. He basically shut me down and locked me away, fearing that if I were to fall into the wrong kind of hands, I would be used for evil. Lois expressed as his face shifted into a sad look. That's a little suspect. Jay retorted with a nervous expression on display. I know. I don't blame you for thinking that way. But I'm a nice little block. Really. It was just getting hard staying cooped up in there. Especially when someone like you was in need of help. Upon hearing these words, Jay slightly sat back up and cocked his head once more, feeling another shift of emotions in his gut. What? What does that mean? What do you mean by your call? How do you know about me, my friends? How do you know my name? Talk, Cube! Jay demanded to know, as Lotus's face shifted into that of a nervous stare. Hey, don't worry, kid. It's just my nature. I can hear all and see all of those who are within my presence, especially for someone who has such unique abilities, such as yourself. Lotus explained before rolling out of the chest and clacking to the floor. Look, I know this may sound crazy, but your energy, it awakened me to a semi-aware state. From the moment your mom and dad brought you home, I was here as an observer. You've got similar abilities as I do, it would seem. Lotus expressed with an awe stare that left Jay looking to his hands. Abilities? Like you? The Sparklet asked with a stern eyebrow raise. Yeah! I mean, how else would I suddenly awaken from your touch? I love the splash of purple too. It's a nice change of look. Jay didn't know what to say. He was baffled and in shock with this creature. He wasn't sure how to respond, how to react. All he could do was question. What do you mean by that? Jay asked, leaving Lotus to give a curious expression. It means exactly what it means. We share a similar power set. And I've picked up on the fact that you don't seem to understand the limits of your capabilities. Something about a city block being destroyed. Gotta say, whoever your friend is, they're a real sweetheart for helping you. Lotus stated, leaving Jay's eyes widening once more in disbelief. Oh my god, you weren't kidding about being aware. Jay gasped out, leaving Lotus to slightly chuckle below. Of course I wasn't kidding. I'm not one to lie. Lotus went on before returning to a neutral stare towards the spark. With that aside, I've come to sense that you are in need of guidance with what you can do. I can feel the worry in your heart, the lack of confidence. I'm really sorry about all that. The cube expressed with a now sad face that left Jay looking to the side. And you know that too. Okay. The Sparklet said before Lotus spoke up once again. Hey, don't be sad, Jay. It's normal to screw up every once in a while. As your pop said, it was a mistake. You were just trying to do the right thing. Turning back to the cube, Jay reached his hand down and picked the small item up. Now holding it within his lap, Jay was now curious about it than nervous. Hearing that from your father and crush is one thing, but from a magical cube? Now I've heard it all. The Sparklet murmured as Lotus slightly leaned back to look at Jay. Well, as someone who had to figure out my capabilities once, I relate to it all too well. The cube replied before continuing on with his almost catchy attitude. So going back to what I was thinking about earlier, since you helped me out of that wooden box, how's about I offer you something in return? With a questioning stare, Jay raised the Lotus Cube up to be at his eye level and asked, An offer? Nodding with its glowing face, Lotus gave a smile and proposed his suggestion. Since you helped me wake up from that terrible slumber, how about I help you learn a little about your powers? You scratch my back, I feel obligated to scratch yours. The cube suggested, leaving Jay to tilt his head once more in a stern thought. Whoa, what? You'd actually do that? Jay asked, as Lotus sparked with buzzes of multicolored electricity, the same hues that Jay expelled as he did his Omega Warp. Of course! That is, if you want to. I'm not saying it should be priority, but I could serve a helping hand in avoiding more catastrophes. Biting the inside of his cheek, Jay thought on it for a good minute, before looking to the side and explaining his current thoughts. Maybe. I don't know. My dad is going to start training me tomorrow, and I still don't know if I should entirely trust you. We just met, and I don't know. Jay replied, leaving Lotus to nod with an understanding gaze. Of course, not surprised in the slightest. You walk the road that you're most comfortable with, kiddo. the cube expressed as Jay continued to hold him in his hand. Yeah, thanks for the offer, though. The spark returned with hesitancy as he then set the small cube down. No problem, buddy. Anyways, you should probably go get some sleep. You look horrendous! Lotus then suggested as he glanced around the basement with his eyes. Also, if you could, please don't tell your father about our conversation. Not only will he flip out on you, he'll return me back to my limbo state. You don't want that, right? Let me tell you, I really don't want that to happen again. Looking down, Lotus's face shriveled into a nervous state that left Jay feeling bad for the little guy, as well as feeling nervous for his own sake. He wasn't sure how many straws would break his father's back, so for that moment, he complied with the small cube's wishes. Of course, Lotus. What should I do? Do you want me to take you outside? You want me to put you anywhere, or... The young Voidson asked, leaving Lotus to instantly respond. You can just put me back in the chest. With my eye reopened, I can return to my own little mindscape and actually feel alive again. You can even lock it back up and everything. With stunned eyes, Jay slowly carried Lotus over and placed the small being within the chest once again, still in a baffled sense of awe. Are you sure? Jay asked with small worry for the cube. Yeah, I don't want you getting in any more trouble. Good luck with the training, by the way. You'll do great! Lotus said with confidence, leaving Jay the nod and even smile a tad. Thanks? He said before sealing the chest and latching it back into place. With a baffled face, Jay slowly stood and eyed the crate. That was really weird, he thought. But at least he didn't blow up the house or release an ancient evil. That's what Jay told himself. Slowly backing up, the spark took in a tiny breath and turned on his heel. But as he approached the stairs, the voice of Lotus called out again. My offer still stands if you ever wish to change your mind. Stopping, Jay looked over his shoulder and eyed the now dark hall of his basement. Noted. He replied, before turning back to the stairs and ascending them. Upon reaching the top, Jay walked back through the hall, retrieved his snacks, and at last returned to his room. Walking inside, the spark placed his items upon his bedside countertop, and at last plopped down upon the bed. Looking over, Jay noticed a knocked out Pofnu and Gluppy, and then just blankly stared at the ceiling, recalling upon the entirety of his day. So much had happened. Too much if he was being honest. Too much for his exhausted brain to process. Slowly, Jay lowered his eyelids and dropped into a very deep and deserved slumber, all the while wondering what the next day would bring.